by Jodorowsky and Mobius. Now, of course, this is certainly one of the all-time classics in science fiction comics, which I'd heard about my whole life. I'd never read it until now. It's considered to be one of the great science fiction comics. Actually, I'm not, I've been reading comics my whole life, but I'm not as familiar with Euro comics as I think I really should be. So this is part of my attempt to educate myself in a bit more European comics. And Mobius is, of course, if you were to make a Mount Rushmore of the greatest European cartoonists, Mobius would be on that. And I've been not as familiar. Well, certainly Jodorowsky is a very well-known figure. Certainly he's a very well-known filmmaker. As he talks about in the introduction, they collaborated on a movie for Dune, which never ended up making, and that was a lot of the spur for this, the Incal. And okay, so Carolyn and I were talking about it yesterday, and she was mentioning some things about the plot. And yeah, I think I was saying, yeah, this is probably not one of those works you're going to read for the story, for the plot. That would be, kind of beside the point. It's like watching a Marx Brothers movie. Can you say what the story, the plot is of a Marx Brothers movie? It doesn't matter. It's not the point. That's not why you're watching. And I think kind of the same thing here. You're not going to read this for the plot. The plot, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but that's really not the point. The reason this is of value, the reason this is worthwhile is, really Mobius's artwork for one. The imagination, the spirit, the fire, the way he delineates this future civilization and society. And there's just a heap load of visual elan and visual imagination poured into this thing, and it can be kind of overwhelming. Mobius is definitely one of the all-time greats when in terms of visual graphic design of his comics. And this is quite a ride to go through, certainly. We didn't even finish it. As I was talking to Caroline yesterday, and we only did book 1 and 2. I think there's a 3 and 4 and 5, and there's just not enough time to do everything. But you just want to delve into and experience the richness of this world, this visual richness, and the colors and the atmosphere and the evocative environment that you're plunged in, and these crazy mad ideas, and and as always, as we talk about in this group, when we stack things up against the best of other media, the best of movies, of television, of novels, or whatever plays, does it hold up? Does it stack up? Does this stack up among the great science fiction works? Well, probably not. No, probably not. But I think what I'm trying to get to is, do we have to hold different standards for different media? I still don't know the answer to that. I'm still kind of working that out in myself, because this certainly does have a great deal of value to it. It's not going to be considered great science fiction, probably not. The same way when we were talking about Will Eisner's A Contract with God, it's not going to be put up against the great mainstream literature. But it has its own, but it has its own value. It has its own reason for existence. Any comments from anybody? What did you all think about this?
Well, I noticed your rationalist bent there when you were talking about standards, as if something is to be measured on the XY graph of art.
Yeah, it comes down to how we critically assess art itself, and I have a tendency to try to assess it according to the intention of the creators. Not all artwork are created with the same intention. Sometimes the narrative is most important, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes the emotion, the feeling that you get, the the passion, the energy is a lot more important. And sometimes the visual nature of the experience, the as a phenomenal sensory experience of the movie, or whatever, the music of it is most important. And sometimes you want to get across, just raw passion, the raw truth of existence, the human experience. And sometimes it's about the craft of it. Sometimes it's about the style, the way an artist has constructed their world. And those are all perfectly entirely valid. We also do a movie night, and we've seen some movies that are entirely based on the subject matter, and there are some movies that are entirely, tone poems. We watched Allegro non troppo the other week, and that's just about the music and the animation.
Did you cry for the cat?
Not really, no. But
You have no heart.
yeah, you try to assess an artwork according to the standards that it itself has attempted to establish, and then you ask, okay, what is it attempting, and then did it do it well, did it accomplish it well or poorly? I think that's a good, useful measure to use for assessing.
The argument is it comes from that Robin Williams film, Dead Poet Society, which questions the rational aspect. I'm not saying rationalism is wrong, but it can. I think the point is that it's not the be all and end all. That's what I think Williams was trying to make. His character was trying to make the point he was trying to make in the film. Well, story-wise, I agree with you. I thought it was a bit lame. It looked like a story. This is it. I'd say my impression in creating a good story, that it's a lifetime's work. You take the basis of a story and you work it and rework it and add in detail and see significance, and eventually you might come up with a real cracker. But it takes time, usually. There's not many that can tell a good story off the bat. Now, what makes me curious is Frank Herbert, Dune. This guy was implying in the articles I saw that he was somewhat influenced by Dune. And I tried to read Dune once, and I found it really poor writing. But nevertheless, the story is magnificent. So how long did it take Frank Herbert to come up with his story? How long was it rattling around inside his head before he tried to put it down and publish it? Because I don't know, did it suddenly all come in a flash of inspiration, or was he reworking that story in his mind for years? Because it's a fantastic story. I mean, all right, you have the first dumb movie, then you have the first agreeable miniseries, and it's great stuff.
Yeah.
Magnificent. But this story is based on the classic tale, and it's even given away in the name of the hero. Flash Gordon was based on the same classic medieval tale as well, and so much of our heroic tradition comes from this classic tale of the Middle Ages. Anybody ringing a bell with anybody? The classic fool character of the Middle Ages? Which tale it was?
The classic fool.
Yeah, the most famous and the greatest of all fools. Even Wagner got into him.
Oh, it's probably not the one you're thinking of, but I can think of the jester in King Lear. But that's
okay, Sir Percival, the foolish knight.
okay. All right, yeah. Okay.
Where the knight, they all race out of Camelot to find the Holy Grail,
Oh.
and all the smarter knights screw up. Sir Percival is the one that makes it, although he saves one of the other knights and brings him to the Holy Grail as well. But, you know, Sir Percival is just riding along on his horse, along with all the carnage of all these clever knights he knew in, you know, Camelot. So he's one hung on a tree, one stuck with lances, one succumbed to the evil temptress. They've all screwed up except Sir Percival, Camelot's supreme idiot, is the one that makes it. Any reason as to why that might be?
And a child shall lead them.
Well, yeah, a little bit. It's the thing was that all those other knights, all the super smart knights in Camelot were super smart in a terrain they knew, which they were accustomed to. So they're all hitting the big scores in Camelot in various ways. So Percival was the guy down the bottom. But when they were thrown into a new game, a new set of rules, all the smart knights screwed up because they didn't adapt to the new environment. They were still stuck in Camelot in their mindset. So Percival knew he was behind the ball. He knew he didn't know everything. That had been ground into him over the years. So he didn't fall for the traps. The traps were all laid out for the smart knights. There's not the knights that fought. They knew the answers. And this was the thing, that the evil powers in the story also couldn't quite get a grip on Sir Percival. He was acting in ways they didn't expect. They were expecting reason. They were expecting somebody to act in a certain way, and then this guy comes along and he's not playing with he's not doing their game plan, and so they're like Wile E. Coyote. They just keep on missing. Does all that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same argument, discussion we always have on our Tuesday mornings for you, discussions. The rational mind versus intuitive mind, gnosis versus knowledge. Yeah, and we're a society that's widely out of balance on that, certainly. Yeah, actually, that was one thing that occurred to me about the Incal was it's very dreamlike. I mean, it just has a kind of a dream logic to it. When you go from story point to story point, it's like a dream unfolding.
I thought it was interesting that so when in the first few pages, I couldn't tell if they were in an older period or in the future, because they're all wearing clothing that they wore in the Middle Ages, right? Their clothing,
yeah,
was medieval style, right?
There's only so many ways to dress the human body.
Yeah, that's an old trick that science fiction people have used, is that if you want to portray a futuristic society, look to the past. Yeah.
Well, this is the big question, isn't it? The modern Enlightenment would say we're on the path upwards, and we'll have a few hiccups, but eventually we'll never look back. This is Hegelianism.
Right.
Whereas the ancients talked about a cycle that you'll end up going back into the ground and re-emerging. Who's right?
Mm.
That, yeah, in a sense, yeah, the ancients are saying that, nah, history rhymes.
I'm not sure I really like the protagonist in this story, John DeFool. I mean, he's not that likable,
Right.
right? He's kind of
Well, neither was Sir Percival.
I agree. Yeah. No, he's not. Yeah. I think it's a lot of the great I think a lot of protagonists and great stories are actually not very likable. Mm.
Well, that's part of the magic. That's why the evil powers find it difficult to get a grip on him. Again, he's different.
Yeah.
but I love his sidekick, the what's the name of
The
Depot?
concrete seagull.
Depot. Yeah.
Well, there's nothing much to recommend Defoe, really. I mean, given his own choices, he would be just a hedonistic fool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if as we were saying before, I don't know if we could really say this is a successful narrative story, in terms of, does the protagonist have any kind of a character arc, or does he have a, uh, quality characterization? And, does the plot make sense? Yeah, it
Well,
probably doesn't.
there's a toilet bowl sequence at the start and end of the story.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's how instead of Alice through the looking glass, it's Defoe through the toilet bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what happens in the rest of it, because I haven't read the rest of it. So
I have the
It's a-
whole book, the whole book. I really want to finish the rest of it.
oh, really? You think you'll keep going with it?
I would like to, yeah.
Ah, all right.
I love the ending. The ending of this, the one that you sent us,
Right.
up to book 2, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, so sorry to interrupt. How did he end up with the Incal again? I kind of forgot. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, or
Well, he
somebody
ate it,
intentional?
right?
What?
He ate it, and yeah.
There's one of those other creatures that had it. What were they? The creature he met down the sewer.
Yeah.
And somehow he gave the Incal over to
Yeah,
him.
one of those mutants gave it to him, and then he opened it up, and something odd happened, and
But he makes an error
well,
in thinking that the Incal is there to serve him. The Incal is there to make him serve its motives.
share my screen here.
I'm trying to find the
Right here.
where.
Right.
Okay, what page is that?
Looks, well, from my edition, it's page 18.
Page 8.
The mutant hands it to him. The Incal, he opens it up, kaboom.
Okay, his dress is early 19th century. Before Beau Brummel popularised pantaloons, I think he got them from Spain. If you've ever heard of Beau Brummel.
Yeah.
I better put a link for Beau Brummel in there. What's the matter with the clothes I'm wearing? Can't you tell they're all out of style?
Does anybody remember the show Aeon Flux? No, MTV used to. No.
Oh yeah, Aeon Flex. Yeah, I remember that now.
I kind of got reminded of that. It was really just about the visual and the graphic design of it all, and the mad technology and crazy ideas.
So you're saying it's a B grade science fiction story?
I do have a review that I thought one of the reasons why I chose this was this review. I don't know. Jodorowsky, a cult filmmaker, El Topo, The Holy Mountain, brings a kind of cosmopolitan taste, steeped in polyglot cultures, to the characters and story. For the most part, it is a tale of convincing linguistic texture and perspectival nuances. It is a humanly diversified future, a world of plausible differences that convinces us to suspend disbelief on the grounds of just those strengths, culture, values, psychological and spiritual entanglements, most commonly missing from the works of linear rational science fiction authors. The anthropological dimension is handled with some sophistication here. And Mobius's style and design complement that polyglot quality excellently. He has a genius for form that is as authoritative and aesthetic in its high-tech applications as in its more organic contexts. His deft sense of perspective and architectural ambiance adds ingeniously articulated space and an epic panoramic quality without which we could hardly believe the coexistence of the many settings among which the story shuttles. The grandeur of architectural design and the noble or debased quality of life to which it is a testimony demonstrates that Mobius is one of our very few fantasists whose imagination reaches into the civic, into the cosmopolitan interactions of classes and peoples. And repeatedly, Mobius makes a deft display of concrete or sculptural texture and pattern, a sheen of figurations with their own integral style and rhythm, too irrational to have been assessed by facile visualizing skill. This kind of generation of existential density, a generosity of excess detail, makes these fantasies read not as illusions, but as layouts with their own virtual reality. It is a testament to the quality of Jodorowsky and Mobius's imaginations that the cheap expectations of the readers are more often than not defeated and transmuted into a higher kind of reading, less governed by routine and cliche.
And it's also French.
I was thinking you might point that out as well, Stephen.
Yeah, it's got that sort of very materialistic outlook. I tend to notice, if you're German or, British, will get into the subjective much more. But the French, so it's like Jules Verne's science fiction compared with, say, some of the early British authors. Jules Verne's classically all that external science fiction technology without much concern for the subjective.
Yeah.
Certainly Captain Nemo has his motives, but everything is so, in the French mind, is so orientated towards externals. And the French like the external world. To them, the external world is a pleasant place, full of croissants, frog legs.
Yeah.
So these guys, they look so French. Now, this is another thing, the technocrats.
Oh.
This is bringing up the cult. We live with this cult today. We live with a technocratic cult today. We live in a world of technocrats who think that their reason can provide all the answers.
Yeah.
And this is mirrored in the story of Sir Percival, who were the experts in the Middle Ages, who were the technocrats back then. The technocrats back then were the church, the Pope, who were telling us, this is how you will think, children. This is how your minds works. We are the beginning and the end of your subjectivity. And this is what the heroes are up against in this story, against the abominations of the technocrats. So there are all the elements of a powerful story there. It's just that it hasn't been smoothed out, so to speak. It hasn't been filled in. It's rough. The story's rough and very externalized.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do think it's pretty obvious they were just making it up as they went along, which sometimes yields some pretty interesting results.
So there's comedy relief, the concrete seagull.
Yeah.
He's the fool's fool.
Right.
There we are, the techno-pope. Yeah, he looks like a few crazies I've seen wandering around today. Yep, definitely. Dr. Fauci.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mobius is definitely one of the great visual imaginations, and yeah.
Fanatic legions of technocrats, men with no doubts.
Yeah. And I think this did actually spin off, start its own franchise, and I believe it still continues to this day. The stories set in this universe, and not done by the original people, but people say it's actually really very good. Maybe someday we'll get to that. Maybe. We'll see.
So the curious bit is when he's divided into four by the Incal. And he finds that he's four different people in one.
Yeah. Yeah, you could have some kind of a psychological reading of what's going on with all this.
Well, that's the tragedy of our world. I think that's my observation. We are not who we think we are. We could adopt, depending on the circumstances, we can adopt numerous behaviours based on our interpretation of external circumstances. The external is always a temptation. And people seem to think that they are a certain somebody who's, 7 years old or 14 years old, and that's based on living within a certain type of a bubble of experience. But if you have experiences outside that, you might change, become somebody else in a certain way.
Right.
What do you think this Incal represents?
Well, it's an item of power, we have plenty of that. And, you know, the old, you know, you have the magic sword or the holy grail.
Yeah, and
This is a holy grail sort of thing, I think.
and then the fact, like you said, that only this fool, this guy who's, you know, not just an average Joe, seems to be the only one that can hold it.
Because he hasn't been corrupted. That's the thing. A corrupt person, once corruption is, the machinations of corruption are in their character, they tend just to go downhill with that corruption. But the fool's still a bit of an innocent. He doesn't crave power, but the corrupted will crave power. And once they get their hands on some power, that's it.